Elizabeth Momamina is a co-sponsor of this global event, has intense knowledge and experience in the field of environment, and holds a high stature in the United Nations Environmental Programme. In her, we find a new friend of India in UNEP, an association which will go a long way. I welcome you, Elizabeth. A very hearty welcome to this august gathering of ones who govern, the ones who are associated with governance, and the ones who are going to govern one day. I welcome His Excellencies, the Ambassador and High Commissioners from various countries present in this conference, Honorable Judges of the Supreme Court of India, Honorable the Chief Justices of various High Courts, Honorable the Judges of various High Courts, former Chief Justices of India, Judges of the Supreme Court and High Court, Chairmen and members and of various tribunals, and the members of the judicial services from all over the country. I also welcome Honorable Minister from other countries, foreign delegates and representatives of various countries, the delegates to this conference, the chairmen and the member secretaries of the pollution control boards, senior bureaucrats, presidents and members of Bar Association, members of the Bar Council, other distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the print and press media. I but cannot take a special privilege in welcoming tomorrow's India, the students and the faculty members from various educational institutions of this country and from abroad. I welcome you, dear students. It is cheer for one and all to understand the importance of a healthy environment, which is now evanescent. I am reminded of what Augustine said, and which I quote: "Nature bears long with those who wrong her. She is patient under abuse, but when abuse has gone too far, when the time of reckoning finally comes, she is equally slow to appease and to turn away her wrath." Unmindful and unplanned rampant development, causing irreparable damage to nature, greenery, and destruction of water bodies, has taken its toll on environment and ecology all over the world. The impact of air pollution owing to emission of carbon monoxide by large number of vehicles and harmful gases from factories is discernible anywhere. The deterioration of environment has also led to various kinds of anthropologic disasters and natural calamities, which includes Bhopal gas tragedy, flood in Uttarakhand, Jammu and Kashmir, tsunamis, nuclear disasters, landslides, and the London smog. The rudimentary cause of global environmental degradation is the unsustainable consumption of environmental resources by the planet's most economically privileged inhabitants. 20% of the world's population consumes approximately 85% of the planet's timber, 70% of its energy, and 60% of its food. The population is also responsible for more than 90% of world's annual production of hazardous waste. Various research studies depict that illegal dumping of garbage in ocean is rampant. Furthermore, according to a study published by the United Nations University, most of the e-waste was generated in Asia, and the highest per inhabitant e-waste quantity was 15.6 kg was generated in Europe, America, while the lowest quantity of e-waste was generated in Africa. A healthy environment is necessary for social, economic, and personal development, and is an important dimension of equal and quality of life. it is vital to have a bird's eye view of the concept of environment, for it is related to so many different fields. It saddens me when I note that global economy has been exceeding ecological limits and is producing a variety of destructive impacts, including climate change, diversification, deforestation, degradation, and waste of land and other natural resources. The United Nations Millennium System and Ecosystem Assessment concluded that human economic activity during the last half-century has produced more rapid and severe ecosystem degradation than any other comparable era of humans living. During 1990s, international development goals were framed to empower the means of achieving sustainable development. The flavor culminated into formation of Millennium Development Goals. One of its significant goals was to improve environmental management. It is pertinent to note that MDGs are a commitment of the UN to establish peace and healthy global economy by focusing on major issues like poverty, children's health, empowerment of women, sustainable environment, disease, and development. They were a product of iterative distillation extracted from a wide era of global processes with many actors involved over several years. The realization that daunting and urgent environmental challenges confront humanity prompted a reflection on the nature of the sustainable development, which led to formulation of high set of goals with targets of achieving those goals by 2030. India has not only propagated but implemented the real principle of sustainable development and environmental protection. Dimensions of India's environmental policy are unambiguously stated in the speech of the Honorable Prime Minister delivered at the Paris Climate Change Conference and at the United Nations Sustainable Development Summit, and to my mind, the whole nation stands behind this statement. One of the greatest challenges in environmental jurisprudence is the faced globally today is the implementation of soft and hard laws of the international and national level, respectively. The theme of this conference make a genuine effort in collaborating with UNEP for the first time in India to provide a platform for a comparative deliberation and analysis of various persisting environmental issues and formulate a roadmap effectively achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. The conference is spread over 7 technical sessions, including a panel discussion coupled with inaugural and valedictory session. Presently, the depletion of ozone layer and rise in global warming are burning issues demanding immediate attention of all concerned. Interestingly, the Meenakshi Amman temple in Madurai in Tamil Nadu comprises the Bhugol Chakra, which lives and has been there since almost 700 years, illustrating the demarcation of ozone layer, confirming that care should be taken to prevent global warming, and that thereby depicting India's environmental conscience since time immemorial. The supreme law of the land, Indian Constitution, exhibits keen interest in conservation of environment. The Constitution mandates for equitable development in consonance with sustainable development and enjoins upon the state and the citizenry both a set of duties to protect the environment and conserve natural resources of the country equally and in no uncertain terms. Since the last 2 decades, the Supreme Court of India and higher judiciary has been actively engaged in many aspects in protecting the environment, while conventionally the executive and the legislature has played a major role in governance and process. The Indian experience, particularly in the context of environmental issues. The most significant contribution, in my humble submission, is for which every individual who cares for nature would complement the Indian Parliament is the enactment of the Environmental Protection Act 1986 and the National Green Tribunal Act 2010. This was a big leap in the direction of a dedicated environmental forum that could work towards preventing environmental degradation. The NGT is enduring its best to fulfill the legislative intent of expeditious disposal of environmental dispute by settling nearly 82% of the instituted cases within the year of their institution. It has added new dimensions to the environmental jurisprudence of the country in relation to consultative process in adjudication of onus of proof, settling crystal principles governing fait accompli cases the tribunal has developed, bringing to fore environmental awareness. Bearing in mind the wise words of Joseph, the aim of an argument or discussion should not be victory, but progress. This conference seeks to ask new questions, explore new possibilities, and effectively look at old problems from new global angles so that the Sustainable Development Goals can be amicably achieved worldwide. If all requires a great creative imagination, and I am hopeful that the discussion, deliberation, and debates demonstrate such rare creativity this time. The conference would provide a way ahead for various environmental issues in consonance with the environmental jurisprudence. There has to be equitable balance for environmental protection between the developed countries on the one hand and the developing countries on the other, which would further the cause of environment and humanity, while conforming to the ideology of Vasudeva Kutumbakam. That is, the whole world is just one big family. Thus, now the inevitable decision that humanity has to take is whether it has to carry out development for destruction or development for making the Mother Earth more beautiful for the human life and the planet residents. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Honorable Shri Justice Swatantra Kumar, for your very warm welcome address and also for setting the context of this conference. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to now invite Shri Mukul Rohatgi, Attorney General for India, and I may please request him to kindly address us.
Good evening, everybody. Honorable the Prime Minister, the Chief Justice of India, Justice Kumar, Minister for Environment, the Honorable Finance Minister, Madam Elizabeth from Kenya, sitting and retired judges of the High Court, the Supreme Court, and especially some judges of the High Court of Delhi I see here. I am grateful that I have been given a chance to be present here at the inaugural session of this international conference. On 25th of September 15, the UN General Assembly formally adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, along with a set of bold new global goals, which Secretary General Ban Ki-moon hailed as a universal, integrated, and transformative vision for a better world. Though all the goals are important, the ones relevant for today's discussion are: goal number 3, ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages; goal number 6, ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation; goal number 13, take urgent action to combat climate change and impact; and lastly, goal number 15, to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, halt and reverse land degradation, and halt biodiversity loss. It is heartening to see that there is a joint global effort on these goals because scientific studies have revealed that environmental issues are not local and cannot remain local. Take, for instance, the El Nino effect, which is the prolonged warming in the Pacific Ocean, sea surface temperatures when compared with their average values. It occurs near Peru in South America. However, amongst its effects is the rise in surface pressure over the Indian Ocean, Indonesia and Australia. This affects the monsoon in India and is well known that a good monsoon is critical for India. La Nino has the opposite effect of cooling of sea waters. Consider the forest fires in Australia or Indonesia, which have a significant effect for the whole of Southeast Asia. It is also significant to note that this agenda considers sustainable development as a goal. Developing countries like India can ill afford to embrace an extreme stance. The agenda will surely help in ensuring a delicate balance. Coming to the rule of law and its position vis-à-vis this agenda, I must note that India does have necessary legislation in place in the form of the Environment Protection Act, the Air and Water Pollution related legislations, and most significantly, the National Green Tribunal Act of 2010. The NGT is an apex body with an all-India presence and a strong composition headed by a retired judge of the apex court. The problem in India in the past has been one of implementation and political will. Regimes in the past have not only lacked the sincerity for implementation, but have rather even made the environmental clearance certificate a process or a device of corruption, creating huge hurdles for sustained economic development. This was a huge political issue in the run-up to the last general elections, which the Honorable Prime Minister highlighted, with environment certificates being the final and the most onerous hurdle to legitimate business, development and investment. It goes without saying that the present government, under the Minister for Environment, has brought back the sincerity of will and ended the neo-license Raj that has prevailed. I must tell you that our Minister is very energetic and takes keen interest in his ministry and the court-related cases. Talking of implementation, one instance that is glaring for the residents of the capital city of Delhi is that of River Yamuna. More than 100 years ago, it flowed next to the boundary of the Red Fort, and there was a central canal in Chandni Chowk. Today it barely flows, and that 2 miles away from the original course. It ought to be a vibrant waterway all the way to the Taj Mahal at Agra. I have myself witnessed through my childhood how this river, its course and its level of cleanliness has gone downhill. In 1909, the waters of Yamuna were distinguished as clear blue as compared to the silt-laden yellow of the Ganges. However, due to high-density population growth and rapid industrialization, today Yamuna is one of the most polluted rivers in the world, especially around New Delhi. Although past governments have spent more than $1 billion to clean up the river, the Yamuna continues to be polluted. Here I am happy to say that the NGT, like with all other issues of pollution, has shown its vital importance in the scheme of India's environmental state by making well-considered directions in the past. So also, with the air pollution in the city, the Supreme Court of India, under the leadership of the Chief Justice, as also the NGT, have taken significant steps. I must give credit to the Chief Justice of India for easing the rules of procedure for hearing of environment cases in the courts. I want to touch upon some solutions in my own humble way. I feel that whatever be the efforts of the government or judicial interventions, you cannot have a solution unless there is participation of the citizenry. It cannot be a one-way traffic. No amount of enforcement, legislation or judicial sanction will help the cause if the people do not rise to help in the endeavor for improving the environment. This cannot happen overnight, and above all requires education on the subject as a measure of foundation. It is virtually impossible for the government to single-handedly work its way to a clean environment. The government does not possess a magic wand. The way forward, in my humble opinion, necessarily involves a public-private partnership. In this regard, 2 very encouraging instances have emerged under the leadership of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister himself led the way by taking up the broom for cleaning up of a premises of a police station in New Delhi. Widening the activities under corporate social responsibility ambit, contributions made by corporates towards the government's two key initiatives, Swachh Bharat and Clean Ganga, are now considered as social welfare spending works. Making amendments to the Companies Act, the Corporate Affairs Ministry has added contribution to Swachh Bharat Kosh and Clean Ganga Fund under this CSR framework. Swachh Bharat Kosh has been set up to attract funds from various entities including corporates for activities related to Swachh Bharat. The Clean Ganga Fund is aimed at pooling money for taking up works to clean the holy river Ganga. These two are the latest initiatives brought under CSR, where contributions can also be made to the Prime Minister's National Relief Fund. I must mention that the Honorable Prime Minister, by attending the World Conference on Climate Change in November 15 in Paris, within days of the ghastly terror attack in that city, shows his and India's steely resolve towards climate change as also against terrorism. In that conference, the Prime Minister sent a clear message that the onus of mitigation of environmental degradation fell on rich and developed nations who have high carbon emissions. He requested the developed world to ratify the Kyoto Protocol, which major emitters have not done, and take up the issue on a war footing, besides keeping aside a substantial sum to the tune of $100 billion for assistance to poor nations. As you are aware, a carbon credit is a term that allows the holder to emit 1 ton of carbon dioxide. Credits are awarded to countries or groups that have reduced their greenhouse gases below the emission quota. A carbon credit is a tradable commodity and can be purchased by, say, a steel producer. The emphasis on clean air in the budget announced earlier by the Finance Minister is also a welcome step. All these initiatives, in my view, are a great start to a much-needed public-private partnership. I would think that the government, going forward, should identify core areas like rivers, hills, and the like for such partnerships. A holistic approach with the participation of the people is the only way forward. Take the instance of the catastrophe in Uttarakhand caused due to unregulated development in the hills. Planning and environmental regulation ought to go hand in hand. Unless there is awareness on the ground, the desired goals of legislation and even the UN agenda which we are discussing today will not be secured. The Honorable Prime Minister has set the tone for this PPP, and I am sure it will only expand in the days to come, thus ensuring that we all work towards a better environment. This conference, I am sure, will throw up new ideas. I wish this conference, organized by Justice Swatantra Kumar, a great success. Not only is he a great organizer, he has also been a very diligent judge, a no-nonsense judge in the High Court, in the Supreme Court, and the NGT. And I must share in the end a secret with you. I have appeared before him in the NGT, but he still has not forgotten that he has been a judge of the Apex Court. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shri Mukul Rohatgi, for your noteworthy address and valuable suggestions. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to now invite Shri Prakash Javadekar, Honorable Minister of State Independent Charge for Environment, Forests and Climate Change, request him to kindly address us.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, Chief Justice of India Thakur Sahab, Finance Minister of India Arun Jaitley ji, Justice Swatantra Kumar, Justice Judicial, all justices from judges from Supreme Court, dignitaries on dais and in the audience. International jurists are here to discuss 2030 development agenda, and which cannot be other than sustainable development agenda, because that is what we are now trying. We are fortunate to have PM inaugurating this, because his commitment to the cause of environment is full and final. I have seen him, the way passionately he works for the cause of environment. He convinced the world at Paris on two of his new ideas, climate justice and sustainable lifestyle. And let me tell you, the way he networked and the way he passionately put before the world all these two concepts. Climate justice is about justice to the poorer sections of society, 3 billion poor of the world, and justice, climate justice is about justice for the poorer nations, and sustainable lifestyle, because he convinced the world that unless we address the lifestyle issues, we cannot mitigate the challenge posed by climate challenge. And therefore, world got convinced, and I am happy to note again that in the Paris final agreement, both these concepts proposed by our Prime Minister, climate justice and sustainable lifestyle, are mentioned in the very preamble of the agreement. That's the great success of India's leadership. He launched Solar Alliance. That's countries between Capricorn and Cancer came together, and that was launched in France, and now it is operational. So this Solar Alliance is a wonderful initiative. I also must appreciate Chief Justice of India when he famously said, and I was delighted on that day, yes, tigers are important, but roads and development are also important. And that is a landmark judgment in a way, because he said that proper mitigation measures need to be taken. But once they are taken, then you cannot stop development. And that is what I think is a new direction. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley ji, under the guidance of PM, has presented practically a green budget. Coal has been seized or taxed, this is a carbon tax, to the tune of 400 rupees, that is $6. And I can vouch that no country in the world is taxing its coal for $6. There are some countries with $1 or $1.5. If developed world follows India's example of taxing $6 a ton of coal, then $100 billion, which is to be generated by the developed world for mitigation and adaptation needs of developing world, will be collected through this $6 tax. And that is the biggest thing we must understand. The budget he presented has many things, green features. 50 million BPL families will be getting LPG. It's not just a health benefit, but it's a tremendous environment and saving of cutting of trees. Swachh Bharat says, and its use, toilets, a huge program, public transport, he has freed public transport and promoted public transport in a way that should have been done much earlier. The Himalayan Initiative, the study he has granted 100 crores for that. The Coastal Initiative, the Soil Health Card, the compost, which RWS and others will be collecting and manufacturing the compost, will be sold through the network of sellers of other agriculture inputs and the fertilizers. Then he has incentivized by giving subsidies to electrical and hybrid vehicles, and at the same time has disincentivized the vehicles which are really carbon emitters. And Modi government's commitment is final and can be seen through migration, preponing the migration to Euro 6 by skipping Euro 5 by 2020, investing 60,000 crores in refineries to have cleaner fuel, the neem-coated urea and the Campa bill, that is 40,000 crore rupees, which were lying idle in banks. We will be releasing it to the state for the purpose for which they were created and generated, that is to plant trees and have more afforestation. The waste rules, waste management rules, all waste management rules we are revising and will be notifying in this month itself. Solid waste management rules, construction and demolition management waste rule, e-waste management rules, biomedical waste management rules, plastic waste management rules, and hazardous waste management rule. We have also started using technology to monitor pollution from polluting industries. And I am happy to say that with our effort of 1 year, now 2,400 out of 2,800 grossly polluting industries have installed 24/7 monitoring sensors, and now we are receiving every 15 minutes any factory which is polluting more than the norms, it immediately comes to our notice. So that's a big thing. This is the commitment. But one point only for the judicial fraternity. We must see things in context. We have 17% population of the world. We have 17% of human as well as cattle population also. And both require food, water and land. And we have only 2.5% of the land. And we have only 4% of fresh rainwater resources. That means there are constraints. And we have to operate within these constraints. And therefore, I think that judiciary, executive and legislature, the three pillars of constitution, must respect each other, must see the context, must see the constraint, and with both senses, that is sense of responsibility and sense of proportion, we have to function in our own domain. That will make India a sustainable India. Thank you and all the best for the conference.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your notable address. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Honorable Finance Minister of India, Shri Arun Jaitley, and may I please request him to kindly address us.
The Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable Chief Justice, distinguished dignitaries on the dais, judges, international delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I'm conscious of the fact that this is an extremely important conference where both international and domestic experts who worked in various fields from policy making to government to civil society to the judicial institution and have been involved in the single-minded pursuit of environmental protection have gathered to discuss really our future. I have no doubt that ideological contradictions which existed at one point of time and which are now globally converging in the direction of protecting both ecology and at the same time being able to sustain economic growth along with it, and to reconcile the two without placing each one of them in contradiction to each other. I have no doubt that the positive steps required for this great balancing act will emerge out of the discussions where all persons with varied experience put their heads and minds together in this. As Justice Swatantra Kumar, the Attorney General, and my colleague Mr. Javadekar have already mentioned, over the last 3 decades particularly, different wings of Indian governance have also gathered a considerable amount of experience in this area. Some 3.5 decades ago, when the judicial institution became active with its initial judgments on environmental protection, questions were raised as to how serious the executive is in this regard. But if we look at and dissect the role of each one of the institutions, the legislature has come out routinely with legislations. The executive has laid down what should be the optimal standards to be maintained. Credit must also go to the civil society, which normally is in these matters ahead of the other institutions in highlighting the dangers of what we are doing to the environment and eventually doing to ourselves. And then from initially laying down principles like the precautionary rule or the polluter paying, at times taking harsh action and closing down the industry till they fall in line, eventually the creation of a specialized institution like the Green Tribunal. I think institutions in this regard have considerably matured. And as the Environment Minister mentioned, the governments are also conscious of this. And that is one of the reasons we use various instruments, from legislation to rule making to even fiscal policy, in order to see that we can make our contribution in this regard. In fact, this year particularly, I was motivated essentially by three considerations when deciding where to raise the taxes. Now, obviously, commodities which common people deal with, you can't make them costlier. But products which can have a hazardous impact on health had to be discouraged, and therefore you raise taxes even as a deterrent with regard to those products. Products which are damaging to the environment. And I think it's here we must realize the full impact of what has been done. It's not only that in coal and in fossil fuels, India has raised a clean energy or an environmental cess. Our policy, even with regard to hydrocarbons, has been guided substantially by this consideration. And therefore, amongst countries in the world which are consciously trying to create a deterrent, even on hydrocarbons, I think one of the key considerations is also environment. Revenue raising could be a secondary consideration. When we rationalize the subsidies, particularly with regard to the cooking gas, the LPG, the Prime Minister had given a call for the Give It Up campaign, because the wealthy are certainly not entitled to subsidies. And therefore, from the entire money that we've been able to save from that rationalization, over the next 3 years, we intend the bottom layer of 5 crore families in India to get the benefit of the initial installation at state expenditure significantly. The first phase will get it this year. It's not merely a social sector program, it's also a very important environmental program. Experts have estimated that the adverse impact of each chula, as is conventionally used, on human health is equivalent to 400 cigarettes. And therefore, each one of those families, which at substantially state cost, and this is going to be a huge 20% of the bottom of Indian society. We have 25 crore families, so 5 crores out of them who are not a part of this mainstream would get the benefit over the next 3 years. Each one of them will switch over. And therefore, each one of these campaigns, I think in some small way extend, I have for instance on hybrid and electrical vehicles continued with the exemptions or the reasonable rates which are levied on them, discouraged it with regard to the more polluting vehicles. But I think two important programs of the government, which should also be seen significantly as environmental programs for which a lot of money is being spent. For instance, a 0.5% cess, a 0.5% cess on all services, now goes only for the Swachh Bharat campaign. That includes the building up of toilets, that includes other ways of keeping India clean. And therefore, it's a campaign which, besides the CSR and the budgetary resources, is also being substantially funded by a cess which each one of us pays for every day. Adequate monies have been made available for the Clean Ganga campaign, because Ganga impacts the lives of almost 40% of Indians. It's one of the greatest economic resources India has. And therefore, particularly between the belt from Kanpur to Varanasi, which is the most polluting belt, that's the first one being taken up for cleansing. And I do hope where earlier campaigns have not succeeded, the present one succeeds. And we are significantly able to make a headway in this regard. One final point to just substantiate what Mr. Javadekar had said. What is our own level of economic development? We still have almost 30% or maybe slightly less of our population below the poverty line. We still have to provide affordable housing to almost 50 to 60% of our population. In terms of industry, manufacturing is only about 15% of India's GDP, and therefore to create jobs and to give a boost to economy, even if we have to reach 25% of the GDP, manufacturing has to increase. State after state has no adequate state transport system, so transport systems will have to be put in place. We have one of the largest reserves of coal in the world, and therefore even when through our economic planning we are trying to switch over to renewable sources of energy, thermal will still play a very important role. What are the extent of self-disciplining that we will have to do? There are two important issues which arise. The concern for climate change all over the world obviously necessitates the basic principle of equity, that there is one part of the world which has significantly developed. While they have contributed a lot to the global economy, they have also contributed a lot to the environment being vitiated. And therefore, if uniform standards are to be applied, then countries which are yet to develop, which still has to get a very large number of people out of the poverty level, can't obviously follow the same standards, and therefore differential standards will have to be raised for them. This being our policy to the rest of the world, but globally within our own country, we as a responsible nation state will also have an important role to play. And in that role, I think the ultimate struggle for a balance between an ideal ecology and a growing economy will have to be met. One at the cost of the other would not survive and would not make India a very sustainable nation itself. And therefore, how do we do the balancing act? We rely on your wisdom to discuss this and to come out with solutions. I wish your conference a great success. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Finance Minister Shri Arun Jaitley, for your poignant address. Ladies and gentlemen, I now have the proud privilege to invite Honorable Shri Justice T.S. Thakur, Honorable Chief Justice of India, and I request him to kindly make his keynote address.
Honorable the Prime Minister, Honorable Ministers for Finance and Environment and Forests, Justice Swatantra Kumar, Chairman of the National Green Tribunal, Shri Mukul Rohtgi, Attorney General for India, Madam Elizabeth, Director, UNIP, Mr. Lavasa, Secretary to Government of India, Excellencies from embassies, Honorable Judges of the Supreme Court, present and former, Chief Justice of the High Court of Delhi and other high courts, judges from different high courts from the country, former judges, distinguished participants from different countries from all over the world, senior government officials, dear students, members of the National Green Tribunal, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to be among you in this inaugural function that marks the beginning of a two-day international conference on issues that concern not only our own generation, but generations to come. The world has by now realized that unabated environmental degradation can threaten progress and quality of human life on our planet as much as it may endanger the existence of life itself. Acutely aware of the need for concerted efforts to preserve for ourselves and for generations to follow, nations around the world have come together to make a common cause of the challenges that confront us and devise ways and means to ensure that while we work and progress to banish poverty and improve the quality of life for the fellow humans, we do so on a sustainable basis. There is enough in the world that would sustain life of comfort and dignity for all, provided we make prudent use of the available resources. Mother Earth can give us all that we need, provided we stop plundering its resources for greed. We all know that the basics of sustainable development and their importance are universally accepted. This is evident also from the fact that since 1962, as many as 90 countries have included the right to healthy environment in their national constitution, India being one of the first to do so. National and international conferences like this provide a great opportunity to the stakeholders to air their views, devise strategies, review the progress made, and rededicate themselves to the formidable and daunting goal of making the world environmentally safe and human life on it secure. It is in that spirit alone that we see such a large participation in this conference from all over the world. India has a unique socio-economic milieu, so very conducive to the acceptance of pollution-free environment as an essential part of right to life. We have a very large population, nearly equal to that of China, majority of whom believe in the importance of the 5 elements that constitute human life. They worship earth, water, air, fire, ether in the form of rivers, trees, animals, and nature itself as a manifestation of the divine. We have therefore a head start on account of our deep and abiding beliefs and convictions, because of which any crusade against environmental degradation must yield richer dividends. In Rig Veda is found the following prayer. The English translation reads, Om, may there be peace in heaven. May there be peace in the sky. May there be peace on earth. May there be peace in the water. May there be peace in the plants. May there be peace in the trees. May there be peace in the gods. May there be peace in Brahma. May there be peace in all. May that peace, real peace, be mine. Unquote. It is on this cultural base that in the year 1976, the Indian Parliament introduced Article 48A in the Constitution of India, requiring the state to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard the forests and wildlife in this country. Article 51A G enjoins upon all citizens a duty to protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. This was 11 years before the United Nations World Commission on Environment and Development produced in 1986-87 its report titled Our Common Future as a wake-up call to the international community about the imminent environmental disaster that threatened to engulf our planet. India doubtless was the first country to put the issue of environmental protection in its basic document of governance. This was followed by several statutory laws for the protection of water in 1974, forests in 1980, air in 1981, and then the Omnibus Environment Protection Act in 1986. In the ongoing campaign for protection of environment, the role of Indian judiciary is no less significant. It is a matter of pride for us in the Indian judiciary that the movement for the protection and conservation of environment started because of the proactive role played by the Supreme Court of India. Parliament had treated environment as a directive principle of state policy, hence a non-enforceable constitutional objective. But the Supreme Court in Municipal Council Ratlam versus Vardi Chand declared that the directive principles which have found statutory expression will not be allowed by the court to become a statutory mockery. The court linked environmental pollution, urbanization, and health as intrinsic to decency and dignity, which are non-negotiable facets of human rights and a first charge on the local self-governing bodies. Municipalities can be justified in their existence only if they can provide the civic amenities that the people of their local area need, declared the court. Lack of finances would be no answer for the failure of their statutory duty. In 1991, the court took another stride when in Subhash Kumar's case, the court declared environment as a fundamental right guaranteed under Article 21 of the Constitution. Right to life, said the Supreme Court, includes the right of enjoyment of pollution-free water and air. The result is that anything that endangers or impairs the quality of life in derogation of the laws gives to the citizens the right to directly move the Supreme Court for redress. Keeping abreast of international legal developments, in 1995, the Supreme Court in the state of Himachal Pradesh versus Ganesh Wood Products balanced the necessity of a development and environment by making sustainable development as a part of India's corpus juris. In 1996, the court incorporated the international environmental principle of polluter pays in the case of Indian Council for Enviro Legal Action versus the Union of India, and the precautionary principle in the case of Vellore Citizen Forum versus the Union of India. The Supreme Court added in 1997 to the basic architecture of environmental jurisprudence the doctrine that governments are public trustees of natural resources in the case of M.C. Mehta versus Kamal Nath. This jural exposition continued in 2012 in the case of Research Foundation versus Union of India by holding that Basel Convention must be enforced to ensure a pollution-free maritime environment so that no vessel suspected to be carrying toxic and hazardous material can enter Indian territorial waters. This dynamic juristic evolution has in Center for Environmental Law versus Union of India established that the entire approach to environment must shift to ecocentrism, that is, from human interest focus to a focus in which humans are a part of nature and non-humans have an intrinsic value in it. Having said that, we cannot deny the fact that judicial orders are passed out of necessity for enforcement of the laws only if the primary system of governance fails to ensure an effective implementation. Judgments passed by this court then compel the discharge of the constitutional and statutory duties. More often than not, the Supreme Court has to step in for protecting the environment on account of the failure of the state machinery to effectively act in the matter. Accordingly, whether it is the Taj Mahal case, the Ganges pollution case, the Delhi traffic pollution case, or the forest cases, the Supreme Court has had to innovate mechanisms and measures to safeguard the health of the people from toxic pollutants, which situational necessity would not have arisen if the enforcement of the laws by the statutory bodies was effective as it should have been. At the heart of the court's role in environment-related cases lies the ineffective, indifferent, or cavalier approach of those charged with the duty of enforcing the law. The problem arising out of absence of a diligent and honest implementation of laws and orders of the courts concerning environment has been constantly pointed out by the Supreme Court. In Ratlam municipality's case, the Supreme Court had warned that officers in charge and even the elected representatives will have to face the penalty of the law if they fail to do what the Constitution and the following legislations direct them to do. In the Indian Council for Enviro-Legal Action case, the court had emphasized that it had to ensure the observance of law and of its orders as a part of enforcement of fundamental rights, and that this power could not be disputed. It pointed out the persistent and insolent violation of law and called for the heads of several units and agencies being made personally accountable for any lapse or negligence on the part of their units or agencies. It suggested the creation on a permanent basis of an environmental audit by specialized bodies with power to inspect, check and take necessary action, not only against erring industries but also against erring officers. The court was acting as a balancing wheel in its concern for environment compatible with a need for industrialization and technological progress. The list of orders which the Apex Court has passed in ensuring compliance with the legal provisions is too long to be exhaustively enumerated here. The courts are always there to do their duty, but the institutional mechanism ought to reduce such interventions by the courts by dealing with the problems effectively and enforcing the law. For enforcement of law is the essence of rule of law, to which we are all committed forever. Several important dimensions of the challenges that the world faces today are slated for deeper deliberations in the course of this conference. Issues touching the role of social and economic considerations to deliver on environmental justice, dynamics of international environmental law and jurisprudence, natural resource of laws and development discourse, waste management, a global issue with domestic roots, pollution, an ever-expanding concern of public health, and emerging issues for international environmental laws, followed by panel discussions, will, I am sure, greatly contribute to sharpening our focus on these areas of concern and throw up solutions that would go a long way in our fight against environmental degradation. I wish this conference success and thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to share my views.
Thank you, Honorable Chief Justice T.S. Thakur, for your notable keynote address. Ladies and gentlemen, we now have the release of the National Green Tribunal's International Journal, and may I please request Honorable Prime Minister to kindly release the same. I request our other distinguished dignitaries on the dais to kindly join in. Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed my proud privilege to invite Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, and I request him to kindly make his inaugural address.
Honorable Chief Justice of India, other dignitaries on the dais, judicial minds from India and abroad, invitees, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, and my dear students. I'm delighted to address the International Workshop on Rule of Law and Sustainable Development. I welcome our friends from abroad and thank for their active participation. This workshop is being organized soon after two important international agreements which happened during 2015. One is the Paris Agreement on climate change. The other is the Agreement on Sustainable Development Goals. Therefore, this conference provides a timely and useful opportunity to discuss the way forward. This is important not only in the national context, but also in the global context. I hope you will keep in mind the welfare of mankind and the concerns of the international community in your deliberations. The role of rules and laws in achieving sustainable development goal is going to be very important in the days to come. However, rules should be such that they facilitate the achievement of these goals. Unfortunately, sometimes the concern of environment is defined narrowly. We all have to realize that if there is a conflict, no one's purpose will be served. I hope that you will show us the way to build and ensure climate justice across the globe based on legal as well as social frameworks. Last year in September, I attended the meeting of the United Nations General Assembly, where the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030 were adopted. These goals reflect our evolving understanding of the social, economic, and environmental linkages that define our lives. This was followed by the COP21, where we contributed significantly in shaping the narrative. Our commitments at COP21 underline the Indian ethos, which aims at changing human lifestyle along with changes in the manner in which we engage in economic activity. The problems of environment are largely the effect of our consumptive lifestyles. If we want to make a meaningful impact, we all need to look within before we read the books of law. Friends, I have always felt that anything which is not sustainable cannot be called development. In our culture, development means Bahujan Hitay, Bahujan Sukhay. Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Santu. And Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. This cannot happen unless the development process is inclusive and sustainable. Anything which compromises on the ability of future generations to meet the requirements cannot be called development. We in India have always believed in sustainability. For us, the law of nature holds great value. If we all observe it, then many man-made laws will not be required. Only the practice of Sahajivan and Sah-Astitva will be enough to help us. In modern terminology, there is a word called stakeholder. A path becomes sustainable if all stakeholders are benefited. However, I must add a word of caution here. The state should be natural. It should be inherent. It cannot be stretched to include those who may be working with ulterior motives. Nature is pure. Hence, only pure intentions can keep it intact. We in India have a strong tradition of living in harmony with nature. We worship nature. We worship the sun, the moon, rivers, land, trees, animals, rain, air, fire. These elements of nature have been given the stature of gods in our culture. Moreover, in Indian mythology, most of the gods and goddesses are associated with an animal and a tree or a bird. Thus, respect for nature is an integral part of our culture and has been passed across generations. Protection of environment comes naturally to us. This strong tradition has been a guiding principle for all of us. There is a well-known Sanskrit saying, Sarvame Sham Swastir Bhavantu, Sarve Sham Shantir Bhavatu, Sarve Sham Purnam Bhavatu, Sarve Sham Mangalam Bhavatu. Which means we always pray for welfare, peace, fulfillment and sustainability of all, at all places and for all times. This is our commitment, not of today, but since time immemorial. If we remember this, follow this, and act accordingly, India could provide leadership in sustainable development. For example, the practice of yoga is aimed at balancing contentment and worldly desires to lead to a path of moderation and sustainable lifestyle. When I talk of yoga, it is not just its physical dimension. Yoga is very comprehensive. The idea of yam, niyam, pratyahar teach us discipline, austerity and control. Much before the debate on sustainable development began, Mahatma Gandhi, the father of our nation, had said that we should act as a trustee and use natural resources wisely. It is our moral responsibility to ensure that we leave a healthy planet for future generations. Friends, I'm sure all of us agree that poverty is the biggest challenge for environment. Therefore, eradication of poverty is one of the fundamental goals of my government. Guided by our core values, we are working towards achieving this goal with sincerity. We want to ensure a conducive environment for 1.25 billion Indians to develop and prosper. We are encouraging education, skill development, digital connectivity, and entrepreneurship to provide an enabling ecosystem for our youth to blossom. We aim to do all this in a sustainable manner. We realize that fulfilling the demand for energy is vital to the achievement of our development goals. This is why one of the first challenges that we took up was generation of 175 gigawatts of renewable energy. We are well on our way to achieving this objective. We have also taken up the Swachh Bharat and Clean Ganga initiatives. I am happy to note that millions of people across the country have joined the cleanliness drive. I take this opportunity to invite the participants to explore as to how we can strengthen this collective endeavor. I am glad to learn that this workshop will also discuss issues related to pollution and waste management. These are issues that need to be addressed proactively. I look forward to your recommendations towards strengthening such initiatives. Friends, the problems we face in India today are not unique. Other civilizations have also faced similar problems and were able to overcome them. I believe that through our collective efforts, we will succeed as well. While doing so, we must ensure that we avoid contradictions between our need to develop and develop sustainably. Our culture teaches us union between the Vyakti and Samasti. If we become one with the universal order, there are no conflicts of interest. Therefore, my government is treating the challenge of adapting to climate change as an opportunity rather than a problem. We need to adopt the philosophy of Yoga Karmashu Kaushalam. We must do things in a way that causes minimum damage to the environment. This is Kaushal or a mastery. This is what I mean when I talk of zero defect and zero effect. I have written some of my thoughts on this theme in my book, Convenient Action, Continuity for Change. Friends, the rule of law dictates that no one can be punished for another's misdeed. We need to recognize that there are many people who are least responsible for the problem of climate change. They are also the people who still wait for access to modern amenities. They face the adverse impact of climate change more than anyone else. This includes cyclones, droughts, floods, heat waves, and rise in sea levels. The poor, vulnerable, and marginalized groups have fewer resources to cope with climate disasters. Unfortunately, the present and future generations are also burdened by laws and agreements on environment. That is why I talk about climate justice. Moreover, the rules, laws, practices, and principles of one country cannot be applied to another uniformly. Every country has its own challenges and its own way of dealing with them. If we apply the same set of rules for all countries and for all people, it will never work. Sustainable development is our responsibility. I am confident that we can achieve it collectively. I am also confident that we can find ways for development which are in harmony with nature. We can find them along the road traveled by our forefathers. I hope the deliberations during this workshop will help in developing a shared understanding of these imperatives. I wish this conference a grand success. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for your noteworthy and inspirational inaugural address. Ladies and gentlemen, the Organizing Committee of the International Conference presents to the Honorable Prime Minister the memento as a mark of respect and gratitude with the following citation. Honorable the Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Damodar Das Modi, has steered the country to a new horizon by providing all sections of the society with the hope for a better tomorrow. Shri Modi has accomplished through his visionary leadership the true intent of the framers of the Constitution as enshrined in the words of its preamble, "We the people of India." Cleaning of Ganga as a national mission and Swachh Bharat Abhiyan bears testimony to his commitment to the environment. The Prime Minister deserves the honor for having repositioned India as an emerging global leader. With these words, ladies and gentlemen, may I please request Honorable Justice Swatantra Kumar, Chairperson of NGT, to kindly felicitate Honorable Prime Minister of India. Now, the organizers would like to honor Chief Justice of India with the following citation. Honorable Chief Justice of India, Shri Justice Tirath Singh Thakur, personifies modesty and compassion with great finesse. His work is an illustration of how these two virtues may be effectively utilized for efficacious dispensation of justice. His Lordship's concern for public welfare and environmental protection can be witnessed in his judgments relating to control and prevention of air pollution and deforestation. Despite being a firm judge, he is an ideopracticist who is impelled to imbibe the settled canons of justice at every step. Ladies and gentlemen, with these words, may I request Honorable Justice P. Jyotimani to kindly felicitate Honorable Chief Justice of India. Now, the organizers would like to honor Shri Arun Jaitley, Honorable Finance Minister, with the following citation. The Honorable Finance Minister of India, Shri Arun Jaitley, an elegant personality whose forte is reasoning, naturally carries home his point with any audience. Mr. Jaitley has taken path-making policy decisions to uplift the economy of the country. His concern for protection and restitution of natural resources is evident from the fact that he has allocated rupees 20,000 crores as a planned expenditure for cleaning River Ganga and its tributaries. The Finance Minister deserves the honor for his able leadership in bringing about transparency and development. With these words, ladies and gentlemen, may I please request Honorable Justice U.D. Salvi to kindly felicitate Honorable Finance Minister. We would like to now honor our other dignitaries. Ladies and gentlemen, may I please invite Honorable Justice M.S. Nambiar to kindly present a memento to Shri Prakash Javadekar, Honorable Minister. I would like to now invite Honorable Expert Member Entity Dr. R. Nagendran, and I request him to kindly present a memento to Shri Mukul Rohatgi, Attorney General for India. May I now invite Honorable Expert Member Entity Dr. D.K. Agarwal, and I request him to kindly present a memento to Ms. Elizabeth Maruma Mrema. From UNEP to kindly propose a vote of thanks.
Namaste. Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, Honorable Chief Justice Shri Thakur, Honorable Union Minister of Finance Shri Arun Jaitley, Honorable Union Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change Shri Prakash Javadekar, Honorable Justice Kumar, Chairperson, National Green Tribunal, Honorable Attorney General Shri Mukul, Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change, Shri Ashok Lavasa, Honorable Chief Justices, Senior Judges, distinguished members of other judicial authorities, government officials, guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I feel honored and privileged to have been asked to extend a vote of thanks on this historic occasion. On behalf of the United Nations Environment Programme, all partner organizations, including the National Green Tribunal, the Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change, the Ministry of Water Resources, I would like to first of all express our deepest appreciation to Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi for gracing this inaugural ceremony and sharing with us your vision on forest and climate change, and of course not forgetting the Attorney General, for all of them for being with us here today. Your presence with us is a clear demonstration of the testament of your dedication and commitment to the cause of sustainable development and of your support to the role of not just the judiciary, but environmentalists, academicians, scientists, and all relevant stakeholders in environmental sustainability. I would equally like to express our sincere thanks and appreciation to the National Green Tribunal, to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, to the Ministry of Water, Resources and Rivers for your partnership with us in UNEP in organizing this conference. My sincere gratitude, personal gratitude, goes to specifically Honorable Justice Kumar, Chairperson of National Green Tribunal, as well as his organizing committee for the perfect meeting arrangements, the logistics support to this conference. Without their great efforts, I'm not sure if we would have been here today. UNEP is pleased to join hands with them in organizing this event. The next 15 years, the period when all people around the world will take revolutionary measures, transformative actions for the fulfillment of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the judiciary and other stakeholders will play a key role in advancing the rule of law for achieving the 2030 Agenda and Sustainable Development Goals. We gather here today to examine contemporary developments in the field of rule of law for the environment and those that have implications for promoting the 2030 Agenda as well as the Sustainable Development Goals. We will review in the coming days the role of courts, the role of other key stakeholders in promoting the rule of law in the field of environment, as well as exchange knowledge, views, and experiences for advancing the rule of law for sustainable development. Last but not least, let me extend a very hearty vote of thanks to each and every one of you for joining us today at this inaugural session of our conference, and to many who have been working throughout behind the scenes to ensure the success of our conference, and whom I cannot acknowledge by names or their affiliations, as the list will be too long, but permit me to say thank you very much for their support and commitment. I am confident that with their very active participation, engagement, and contribution in our effort towards the development of a roadmap for the effective implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, we will all succeed. Once again, our sincere thanks to the Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Chief Justice, Honorable Ministers who have been able to join us and support us in this event, Honorable Attorney General, all distinguished assemblage in this auditorium for your august presence among us on this historic occasion. I can also not forget our future generation, the students who have been able to join us. Those are our future, as the Honorable Prime Minister has equally underlined, the future of the country. I take this opportunity to equally thank the Public Works Department, the Horticulture Department. We can acknowledge the very nice flower in front of us, the technical staff, all technicians who have made this event a successful one. Thank you all very much. Naya Nanya Vada.
Thank you, Ms. Mrema, for your warm vote of thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly rise for the national anthem.
Issues related to rule of law for supporting the 2030 Development Agenda and Sustainable Development Goals will be discussed in this conference at length in coming 2 days, which is of utmost importance to protect our Mother Nature.
पानी, मिट्टी, हवा, ये हैं तो मानव जीवन है। ये समय की आवश्यकता है कि मानव इस बात को और गंभीरता से समझे और पर्यावरण को बचाए रखने के लिए वो सब कुछ करे जो उससे अपेक्षित है। पर्यावरण है तो मनुष्य है, मानव जीवन है और हमारा भविष्य है। धन्यवाद। नमस्कार।